It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
It's time for today's Lucky Land horoscope with Victoria Cash.
Life's gotten mundane, so shake up the daily routine and be adventurous with a trip to Lucky Land. You know what they say, your chance to win starts with a spin. So go to LuckyLandSlots.com to play over 100 social casino-style games for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Get lucky today at LuckyLandSlots.com.
Available to players in the U.S., excluding Washington and Michigan. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey everyone. Before we start today's episode, don't forget that the 35th Melbourne International Comedy Festival is running until the 24th of April 2022. You'll be able to see laugh-out-loud performances from some of Australia's best comedians, as well as international guests who visit exclusively for the season. There's family-friendly performances available for the school holidays, as well as more raunchy performances for those late nights. You can snag yourself a bargain by going on Tight Ass Tuesday, showing a valid concession, or by buying a laugh pack. Purchase full price tickets for 3 or more eligible different shows to receive a 10% discount on your tickets. Head to comedyfestival.com.au now to start browsing all the shows available. Now, enjoy today's episode.
Actually, one of the things about clown is that actors quite often struggle because they've learnt habits. Like they know what works for them on stage, and Philip doesn't like that at all. He's like, no, this is what is this stupid? This funny voice. This way you come on. This is not you're big. This is big shit. And he really does tear actors down, I think.
Welcome, theatre fans and theatrical lovers, to the Theatre Thoughts Podcast. My name's Justin, or you can call me Stin. On this episode, we're going to Melbourne to discuss the art of clowning and the Melbourne International Comedy Festival with performer Damien Warren-Smith. Damien has made a hilarious name for himself in the world of clowning and is touring his latest production, Garry Starr Grease Lightning, which played at the Adelaide Festival and is going to play at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival as well as the Sydney Comedy Festival in 2022. Damien shares his hilarious insights into the theatrical world of clowning and the unique journey his life took that made him fall in love with this unique form of theatre. As usual, you can find all of our behind-the-scenes content and other episode content by searching the hashtag TTPodcast on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. So sit back, relax, and get ready to laugh as we bring you another episode of the Theatre Thoughts Podcast. As some of you may be aware, the Melbourne International Comedy Festival is currently on. It's running from the 30th of March to the 24th of April, and we have a stupendous guest on the show to talk. He has spent the last 18 years as a writer, a performer, producer in Australia and the UK, with some stints in Berlin as well as Las Vegas. He's trained at, and I'm sorry if I butcher this, the École Philippe Gaulier, and formed the comedy troupe Plague of Idiots. You might know him by his stage name, Garry Starr. On the podcast, we have Damien Warren-Smith. Welcome.
Thank you, Justin. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, very exciting, because as the podcast evolves, I keep having new people on all the time. So I guess this is my first straight up comedy podcast.
It's in all honesty, I would not call what I do straight up comedy. Yeah. I think, look, but I mean, it is. It's just, I've made a show purely to make people laugh, but I certainly wouldn't call myself a comedian. Because for me, comedian is very much, I guess there's much more around stand-up. I'd say more than anything, I'm a clown, and I also think that I make theatre. So it's, I'm sure theatre people would disagree.
Yeah.
But there's something very theatrical about my shows anyway.
Well, when I was looking into your background, you're right about the clowning aspect, and a lot of your work is based in the theatre of being a clown and clowning around, and it is different to just going out and telling jokes. You put on a show and bring these audiences in.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll talk about Melbourne in a sec, but let's focus on where you started. So do you have like any stories of what inspired you? Like what made you go, I want to be a clown when I grow up. This will be great.
Well, I mean, I knew I wanted to be a performer much earlier than I knew I wanted to be a clown. And I remember, I think like my first real performing was at the Cooma Little Theatre when I was in primary school. I distinctly remember one of my best mates when I was in like year 4 or year 5. His mum was she was a drama teacher at the local little theatre, and he used to have to go there, walk over after school. And so I, for some reason, started walking over with him, and then we kind of joined the theatre troupe. And before I knew it, I was playing the fairy godmother in this kind of, end of term production, and I just had the best time. And then it sort of came and went because I think I thought I wanted to be a sports person,
right?
Because my older brother was so good at sport, and when you've got an older brother who's amazing at sport, like, he'd win everything, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to be like him. And I was always kind of average at sport, but then it turned out I was really good at entertaining people. So then we moved to Canberra, and I did more drama in Canberra, and then I think I finished year 12 and still wasn't convinced until someone sort of grabbed me by the scruff of the neck and was like, you need to go to drama school.
Yeah.
This is the thing for you. So, so I moved to Sydney and I went to the Actor Centre, which is now, this is when it was in Surrey Hills. It's now moved to Leichhardt, I believe. That was like 2002, 2004. And then as soon as I graduated, because I've got a UK passport, so I thought, all right, I'm going to go to London. So I moved over to the UK and worked as an actor for like a decade. And it wasn't until sort of the end of that decade that I discovered clown. I distinctly remember I was at a sort of play up in Edinburgh, not during the Fringe. I was doing a kids show up in Edinburgh. And I went and saw this play called, it was Moby Dick. It was a retelling of Moby Dick by a company called Spy Monkey. And they've actually come and played the Melbourne Comedy Festival many, many years before that. But I'd never seen theatrical clown before. I didn't know it was a thing, really. I think like many Australians thought clowns just were circus, red nose, big hair, big shoes. So when I saw these 4 idiots trying to retell Moby Dick in a way that I'd just never seen, I thought, what is this? I need to learn more. So I started to delve into where they'd trained, and they'd all trained with this guy whose name you butchered before, Philippe Gaulier.
I'm so sorry.
But you didn't actually. You actually got his name great. It was École, which wasn't quite right.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's terrible. I failed. I did French in uni, and I failed it. So
no, you didn't butcher it at all. It was beautiful. I mean, everyone's butchering it anyway. I don't think I even know I say it correctly.
Yeah.
We'll call him Phil.
Phil.
But yeah, so they'd all trained with him. So I couldn't quite leave the UK at that point because I had so much going on. I was working as an actor, and actually my career was starting to get to a point where I could make a living and work constantly as an actor, which is kind of what you think is the dream. And then I very quickly went, I'm getting bored with this. So I started to chase the clown route. And my first workshop was actually with a woman from Australia called Peter Lilly, who teaches over in the UK. And she was great. And she sort of introduced me to clown, and then I just trained with a whole bunch of other people. I left the UK and went to Paris and trained with Philippe Gaulier. Yeah, and I was there I did like a term, and then I went away and did another acting job. Then I came back and did another term. So I didn't actually do the whole 2 years that you can do. But by that point, I trained with a lot of other clown teachers who were his kind of proteges. So I didn't feel I needed to do much more.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it's all just sort of rolled from there. But it took a good 4 or 5 years, really, for after the training, for it to really sink in, because it's a strange beast, clown.
It is. It's very different to like any form of theatre, really. And I guess like my own experience with it is just in its roots, like the commedia dell'arte. That's like the only real experience I've had of the notion of anything close to clowning. So, I mean, I guess for people who are new to it, how would you describe it?
Well, this clown troupe I had was called the Plague of Idiots, which it was a group of people I formed out of Gaulier. And we had this review once that described it as simple, beautiful idiocy. And I thought I like that, because it is just, I mean, clown is, in a nutshell, the thing about you that people laugh at is probably the core of what your clown is.
Right.
And if you can harness that, if you can become aware of what it is about you that is quite ridiculous, whether it is a physicality you have, something about your voice, a personality trait, and harness what it is about you that is inherently ridiculous, and then present that on stage. We don't present it. You just kind of tap into it. Quite often that takes you back to how you were as a child. And that's the ultimate compliment for me, was when my mum came and saw my solo show for the first time. And she just said, well, that was just you as a kid. That was everything you did, your mannerisms, everything about it was like I'd just gone back like 20, 30 years in time. Okay. And so that was a huge compliment to me, because I think it is about tapping into this childlike innocence and play that we tend to lose as we get older.
How did you find? Well, what's your thing? Like, how did you find your thing and go, "That's my clown. That's him."
This is gonna sound okay. I think what it was, because I remember I was seeing this girl while we were in Gaulier, and we were talking about what it is about other people that people say when they leave the room. Because this is as harsh as it is. It's kind of what your clown is. Like, someone leaves the room and you go, "Oh God, can you believe that person's such and such?" Yeah. If that person comes back in and they heighten that part of themselves, you would lose your shit. You'd be like, "Oh my gosh, they know that about themselves." And so mine was this like self-belief that I had that I could do anything. And no matter what, I'd be like, "Yeah, I could do that. Yeah, I'll have a go at that. Yeah, I can do that." And she's kind of, she said to me, she's like, you think you could do anything? Like, that's the kind of, and
look at this guy.
Like, this guy, he thinks he can do anything. And sure enough, and because I had a lot of drama, like a lot of training as an actor, and I'd done clown, and so I had quite a lot of experience when I went anyway. And so there were certain activities that Philippe would constantly pull me up on stage for, because he knew that I would get it. But of course, it also just meant that everyone just thought I was so arrogant, because I'd do it and I'd nail it. I mean, I'm not saying I didn't have some massive struggles. Like, I bombed huge in so many things, because actually one of the things about clown is that actors quite often struggle because they've learnt habits. Like, they know what works for them on stage, and Philip doesn't like that at all. He's like, "No, this is what is this stupid, this funny voice, this way you come on, this is not, no, this is big shit." And he really does tear actors down, I think. But so it didn't really sink in for many years, until, because then the Plague of Idiots came, and I was kind of this host character. And then I was living in Berlin at the time, because I wanted to have a break from acting. Every time I went back to London, my agent was kind of putting me up for things. I'm like, "No, I don't want to do any more acting. I just want to be a clown."
Yeah.
So I moved to Berlin.
Nice.
And then this guy from London called Marcel Lecomte has this thing called the Cabaret Fantastique, and he said to me, "Will you do a spot, like a 5-minute spot? I'm coming to Berlin." I was like, "Well, I haven't done any solo clown, since Gaulier, I haven't done anything." And he's like, "Just say yes and just come and do it." And so I thought, what if, at this point, I was playing, my character in The Plague of Idiots was called Garry Starr, and he was the host. What if The Plague of Idiots had refused to ever work with him again, but he refused to let the show die, and so decided to do the entire show on his own? And then I went, okay. So I sort of came out and I was like, "My name's Garry Starr, and normally I have a lot of more people, but for some reason, they're not here to make it. So I'm going to perform all of their numbers." And so I would do like musical theatre, but I didn't understand what they were.
Incredible.
And it wasn't until afterwards that I remembered that time at Gaulier, and I was like, "Oh, this is my idiot. My idiot is this guy who's very high status and very low intelligence, who thinks he can do everything, and he can't."
That's so funny. You like literally just kind of just fell into it. I had this image, now that you've like done the voice and everything, of just Gaulier just standing there in like a turtleneck with a big cigar, just like, "Oh no, like it's not good."
It's pretty close. Yeah, he always wears a beret, and he has a big beard. And usually, he doesn't anymore, but he used to have a glass of red wine with him during class.
Perfect.
Yeah. He's usually got like a cravat, like a scarf or something on. Yeah, and he's just lovely. I mean, when I say he's lovely, a lot of people have a really hard time, because he will just poke at all your open wounds, and it's because he's trying to find that vulnerability in you. And I think, I've heard people say there's not enough duty of care in that kind of work, but he's experimenting. He's experimenting on you.
Yeah,
he's experimenting on everyone, and he'll insist on something one term, and you'll speak to someone who's doing the next term, and they'll be like, "No, he's never mentioned that."
It's like the Whiplash debate. Have you ever seen the film Whiplash with J.K. Simmons?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the notion: does fire fuel, creativity, or do you have to like kind of pander to people and make them feel good? It's an interesting debate. I've had it many times.
Yeah, he talks about it being via negativa. And I guess Whiplash is a little bit that as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's teaching via negativity rather than positivity. And I mean, there's so many, if you want positive actor training, there's so many schools out there who will be like, we'll cuddle you all the way through your degree. But he offers something different, which is like, he doesn't even really work with people who don't bring something.
Okay.
You've got to bring something. He'll just go, "This person, no. Here's a little drum. Here's a bit of drum." People who got to the end of the 2 years and they were like, "You never work with me." He's like, "You brought nothing."
So what happened when you got to Berlin? So you started discovering who Garry Starr was, and you got to Berlin. How did it go?
So from there, it grew really quickly after that. Then I already had the title of my show, which was Garry Starr Performs Everything. I was like, that's what it is. And at that point, I was like, I was going around the Berlin sort of cabaret scene, I'd go every night and book somewhere and be like, okay, today I'm going to do ballet. Tomorrow night I'm going to do contemporary art. And so by that point, it was about all of art. So I thought I was going to perform all of art. And then I had about probably 30, 40 minutes of material. And I got in touch with this director called Karvan, who's just phenomenal. He's one of the best comedy directors in the world. Since then, even before I was working with him, he was directing for the Royal Shakespeare Company and the National Theatre and massive feature films like, The Amazing Spider-Man. He'd be brought in as a comedy consultant.
Okay.
But since then, now he's directing for the English National Opera and he's phenomenal. And I wrote to him when we were doing Plague of Idiots and asked him, hey, look, you don't have to put your name on it, but if we give you some money, will you work with us for a few days? Because he'd also trained with Gaulier, and so thankfully, he wrote back and said, look, I've got a little window of time. If you can be in London and you pay me some money, you'll work with us. And that was fine. That passed. And then, so then when it came to the solo show, I wrote to him again and I sent him a video and I said, look, I'm working on a solo. Once again, he was like, yeah, cool. If you pay, I'll come work with you. And we got about a week into the creation and he said, you know what? If you want to put my name on this, you can. So it was then Garry Starr Performs Everything, directed by Karvan. And I think that really helped.
Yeah.
It certainly got reviewers in.
Yeah, that's a big tick for sure.
Yeah, and it helped sell the show too, because he also directed The Mighty Boosh, really in their early days.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
So it was like, if you like The Mighty Boosh, it's the same director and all that kind of stuff.
Hey Theatre Thoughts listeners, it's your resident Sydney theatre nerd here, Charlotte. Another instalment of our Cheap Thrills feature is here, and boy have I got some recommendations for you. If you're after something serious and emotional, Heroes of the Fourth Turning is playing at the Seymour Centre until 29th of April. You can grab $35 tickets if you're under 35. If you're after a laugh, the Sydney Comedy Festival is coming right up with acts like Gabby Bolt, The Bear Pack, and Robin Reynolds that I cannot wait for. This week, I'm reviewing Belvoir's The Rep Season, which is guaranteed to be a unique experience. It's 2 different plays on alternate nights with the same set and the same cast. And you can snag tickets from $35. Check out our website for the full list of my recs for great theatre for around $40. And keep your eye out for Maze as well. More comedy coming then, and a musical that maybe shouldn't be a musical from the Hayes Theatre Company. See you next time!
So Garry Starr, because my next question was going to be, who is he? I guess you kind of already touched on him. So he thinks he can do everything. He can do any form of art. But in your latest show that's currently in Melbourne, what's he trying to do? So
for the follow-up show, I thought, okay, it's got to be something else, which is unattainable, really highbrow, pretentious enough that you can take the mickey out of. And most people know a decent amount about it. And so Greek mythology was something that I came up with.
Perfect.
And so actually in 2019, so the follow-up year to 2018 when I made Garry Starr Performs Everything, I decided to do this. So I called it Garry Starr Conquers Troy, and I started to make the show, but I was still performing Garry Starr Performs Everything, and I was on the road, and then I accepted another job, which ended up going to Vegas. It was so I was trying to make this show, and then it just sort of became something else. And it did reasonably well. I did Melbourne Comedy Festival, but small houses, and then got to Edinburgh and struggled through. And then during the pandemic, it started to grow again. I thought, okay, if I was to revisit this now, I'm going to do all the Greek mythology. And I got a job as a delivery driver because, I wasn't performing anymore. Yeah. And while driving, it just started to grow. And I had Stephen Fry's Mythos playing and all these other,
That's incredible.
So it's got all these ideas started to spring up. And so I thought, well, I can't call it Garry Starr Conquers Troy anymore. It's something different. And then I had this idea that he thinks that Zeus, who's the god of thunder and sky, is called Grease Lightning.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
It's time for today's Lucky Land horoscope with Victoria Cash.
Life's gotten mundane, so shake up the daily routine and be adventurous with a trip to Lucky Land. You know what they say, your chance to win starts with a spin. So go to LuckyLandSlots.com to play over 100 social casino-style games for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Get lucky today at LuckyLandSlots.com.
Available to players in the U.S., excluding Washington and Michigan. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
That's brilliant.
I love it. So it made me laugh. And quite often I would test it out. Like, basically, I have a stupid idea, and then I say to my girlfriend, I go, hey, what do you think about this? And if she laughs, then I go, okay, let's make a scene out of it. So then I just started putting title cards up on my walls. I just have basically, I made a list of all the Greek mythological figures that we know, gods, goddesses, gorgons, and then what we know about them, we being me and the general public, because by this point I still didn't know a lot.
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, Medusa. We all know Medusa. Snakes for hair. Everyone knows that. Most people know she can turn people to stone. Great. Move that aside. Zeus, god of thunder and sky, lightning bolts. Great. Move that aside.
Yeah.
And then I also did this little thing, which I worked on with Cow, which is I wrote a list of skills, and they don't have to be things that I'm particularly good at, but like catching food in my mouth, walking on stilts, a bit of acrobatic stuff, speaking text quickly, pretentious acting, all these kind of things from my past. So I'm like, I can do these things.
Yeah.
And then you go, how can Garry misunderstand Greek mythology, knowing these things about these characters and work in this? Perfect. And it's that's how the show grows.
That sounds hilarious. We're talking earlier, our editor Charlotte came to see you in Wollongong, and she raved about it. And she's like, Justin, you have to go and see him. Like, when he comes to Sydney, you have to see him. So that's why when I decided to go to Melbourne to come to the comedy festival, I was like, all right, it's on. Damien's there. He's performing Garry. I'll go see it. So I'm personally very excited.
Amazing.
But what's the best sort of reactions you've had to this particular performance? Is there anything that stands out?
Yeah. So I always leave, when I at the end of the show, I say thanks for coming, and I leave the auditorium first, and I wait and I say thanks to everyone on the way out, because I want to meet everyone, and I want to know what they thought. And I've recently started setting up a camera with a little light on it, and I say to people after the show, on the way out, if you see a little ring light there, it's recording. Just go up and say 2 or 3 words what you thought of the show, and I promise whatever you say, Amazing. I'll post it online. And so I get people just like saying them. But I think the thing that more people say than I ever expected is, I loved it. I'm going to bring my mum.
Oh, no.
And they do. And I get butt naked, and they do. And then a few days later, and this happens time and time again, they go, hi, do you remember me? And I go, yeah. She goes, this is my mum. And the mum's like, oh my gosh, that was so good.
Oh my God.
It's really, really funny. I can't believe how many people say it and follow through with it.
It's a weird thing though, because I sometimes do that as well. And I go, I'll bring my mum to this. This will be great. I don't know if it's the shock factor or just you're the point where you're kind of looking over, waiting for their reaction, or I don't know. But that is so strange.
Yeah, it is a funny thing. Well, I think it's look, I think one of the things that people realize about this show is that it's a cross-generational show, in the sense that there's nothing political and divisive in the show. And I think a lot of people are suffering, particularly nowadays, where it's like, can I see this with my parents? Because my parents, believe these things. And, and this is something where there's nothing I really try and avoid anything which is, at any point people can go, well, I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
It's pure escapism. There's nothing political about it. And I think that's something, and it's also very childlike humor, and that's what people like. Everyone can relate to that. Clown is it's so universal.
Yeah. It's just that ability to kind of switch off, enjoy someone being silly and stupid up on stage, and just having that pure kind of cathartic joy.
Yeah, it is absolutely that. And it's so, already this show is going to 3 continents in the next year, and a lot of it in non-English speaking. When I say non-English speaking, places in Scandinavia where their English is great, but it's not a first language. because it's not a I say it's not a cultural reference. It's sort of Greek culture, but it's not like a Dave Hughes show where, for example, the moment you travel out of certain areas, it's like, well, I don't get that reference.
Yeah, these
references are universal. Everyone knows something about Greek mythology.
Would you have any plans to take it to Greece?
Potentially. I don't think that they're as proficient in. I don't know. I think that it's a place like Scandinavia, everywhere you go, everyone speaks English.
Yeah, yeah.
So if I took it when I take it to Berlin, for example, the Germans come and see it, but it's mostly the English-speaking population.
Right.
Whereas the festivals I'm going to in Scandinavia, even, I will get a lot of Scandinavians who are just like, they would correct my grammar.
Okay.
You know, it's like, so I think if I went to Greece or anywhere, most other countries in Southern Europe, I would probably try and get a translator.
Yeah.
Or I would get someone to translate it and I would learn it. Like if I had a good tour planned in Italy or Greece, I would say I would find a comic from that country and I'd say, okay, let's translate. Because I don't say hell of a lot. I introduce a scene with a couple of like jokes as in puns that I've misunderstood something, and that gets a little laugh. And then I do a game, which is quite often without text, and it's like, you know, I've got music playing, and so that would really, really work anywhere. But the introductions, like the little segues, would just need to be translated.
It could be quite funny as well. You could play around with Garry just being like, "Oh yeah, I speak all these languages. Like I could do it."
Yeah, and also the funny thing is that because Plague of Idiots, we had a Frenchman, a Swiss girl, an Italian guy, or two Italian guys, an Englishman. And so what we found is that playing with language is really fun because when it's not your first language that you're performing in, you can appear like an absolute idiot.
Yeah.
Like you can come out and say words that everyone's like, he thinks that's the wrong word.
Look at this fool.
So fun. Look at this fool. So there's a lot of room for performing in another language. It's just such a ridiculous show. And because I rely on the audience so much, like I just I don't drag people up necessarily. Sometimes I do, but sometimes I just leave it open for someone to get up on stage and play. And that danger, because you just don't know how people are going to respond to things, is what keeps it alive.
Has there been an audience member that has shocked you and surprised you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like particularly early on, because I don't tend to overprescribe what I want them to do. So I say, okay, I need someone to get up and do this, and I don't say too much because I want to see how they're going to, you know, what they're going to do, and then I find the parameters that people tend to work in. And then I go, okay, where's the best spot for them to be? How can I gear them towards that spot without saying too much? But I've had some really, really weird, sometimes a little bit frightening. I had a point where my technician or my stage manager was like, I wasn't sure whether I should intervene. I was like, it's okay. You know, I think in all honesty, if the genders were flipped, I think this could have been really quite frightening.
Right.
And it was frightening enough as it is.
Yeah.
But the wonderful thing is that if someone does something ridiculous, once they've gone and sat down, you don't have to do much because you just look at the audience and they know what you're thinking. They know this poor guy had no idea that was going to happen.
Incredible. I think audiences are they're volatile, some of them. Like some, especially if they've been drinking as well, they're just like, oh yeah, I can do this. Inhibitions are gone and they kind of just let loose. And
that's the biggest worry is the people who have drunk so much that they can't stop talking. And it's when they're talking, if they're talking at me, it's okay because I can respond to that. But if they just can't help the fact that they just want to talk to their neighbour, and that just kills a show. So I get to the point now, I've had that once in Adelaide, and I wish in hindsight that I hadn't just got them to leave because Garry has to acknowledge everything that's happening in the room. So every time someone speaks, you're like, what was that? You know, like it's there. Everything is immediate.
Okay.
But when people are muttering, you can't hear. It's like, what is that you're saying? And then they can't respond because they're too drunk and say, so you move on.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
yeah, it's a killer.
Yeah, it really kills it.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, it's fascinating. I always find it interesting hearing performers' reactions to audiences and seeing like they just shrug it off and go, no, that's expected, or how annoyed they actually get with some people. Because some people have no etiquette when it comes to theatre. And I know I sound like a real snob, but like I'll go to the theatre and what did I say? I saw North by Northwest, which is entirely different, but there was this one person who had their feet up and both their shoes off, and I was just like, this is the theatre. You can't have your shoes off. I just felt like such a snob, but like people just relax in a theatre.
Yeah, it's really funny. It's I just get the weirdest things, and audience participants as well. Some people get really, quite shirty. They kind of like, yeah, it's happened. There's a bit at the end of the show where it relies on this audience volunteer to come up and do something. And it, without, hands down, everyone's always does it because it's not asking a huge amount. And this person just refused to get up. It's the end of the show. It's like the finale.
Okay.
And then I was like, well, that's fine. Someone else could do it. But they wouldn't give the prop to someone else. And it's kind of like, what are you doing?
Yeah, come on. It's the ending.
Yeah.
Well, Damien, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm personally, you've got me like already giggling. I love Greek mythology, so I'm really excited to see how Garry stuffs it up and just presents something new. So thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait for you to see it as well. Look, I love doing it. Thanks so much, Justin.
A massive thank you to Damien Warren-Smith for joining us on the episode today. And thank you to Carly Cadogan at Nixco for helping to arrange the episode. You can book tickets to Garry Starr, Grease Lightning at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival for the 12th of April to the 24th of April by going to www.comedyfestival.com.au. You can book tickets to the run at the Sydney Comedy Festival on either Saturday the 7th or Sunday the 8th of May at sydneycomedyfest.com.au. You can also find all this information in this episode's description. That's it for another episode of the Theatre Thoughts Podcast. If you're looking to see more theatre in 2022 and consider yourself to be a writer, why not join our growing team of reviewers? We are currently on the lookout for new writers in Sydney and Melbourne to join our team. You'll gain great experience in writing reviews and expressing your opinions, plus you get to see theatre shows on us. If this sounds like you, email us at theatrethoughtsteam@outlook.com or by contacting us on our website, theatrethoughtsoz.online. And we'll see you next time here on the Theatre Thoughts Podcast.
Have you ever wondered how your favorite performer actually feels? Well, here's your chance. Welcome to The Quiet Part Out Loud with me, Bobby Steggert, Broadway actor and now a therapist to a whole host of Broadway creatives. Part interview, part therapy, this is not your typical podcast. We'll go right to the heart of things with some of your favorite artists, what they still struggle with, what lessons they've learned, what they haven't figured out yet. There's enormous power in saying the quiet part out loud. Are you listening?
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses, so don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.